refresh tokens, and background notifications. That is what we are on when it comes down to the social media scheduler app. And dealing with refresh tokens is somewhat annoying depending on the situation. I've actually dealt with access tokens and refresh tokens for like years and years and years now. Like, it's not normally a big deal. A lot of people, I think, sometimes tend to get nervous with it and want to use a library. I'm not usually a person who likes to use a library for OAuth or 3-legged. I'm just not. I'm a person who likes to do it the good old-fashioned API way. Just grab up your access token and then be able to use that for a refresh token if needed. If there's some sort of base 64 that needs to be added with a timestamp, like Malwarebytes, because they're pretty wild when it comes to their API, like, yeah, it makes sense. I've dealt with those type of things for a while. So for me, I can say that, like, it's tedious, but at the end of the day, I've used those things enough times for me to kind of figure out what to do. And it's funny because that confidence got me more annoyed when I decided to start with the first refactor of dealing with refresh tokens for LinkedIn. In the code right here in the API handler, when I would be calling out for doing the actual calls, I was actually using the actual access token. So I had to think to myself, how am I going to be able to use the refresh token? How am I going to store it? And most importantly, how am I going to keep the constant refresh, right? So that, like, if a person's posting, they don't need to have to log in every once in a while just to be able to have access to the API to post. So how am I going to deal with all of that? The first one that I was going to do was LinkedIn. Thinking that I was confident, it was Microsoft backed, and I've already dealt with doing Microsoft refresh tokens with Azure. So I was like, let's do LinkedIn first. Like, for sure, let's do LinkedIn. And that confidence led me to some of the most annoying stuff when it comes to LinkedIn. If I go into the APIs, linkedin.ts, you'll see that we have like the LinkedIn access token and we have the refresh token, right? And I was going through this in particular because the way it essentially works is that most of the actual code or most of the actual API call to get an actual access token or a refresh token would be essentially the same, right? That's how it usually is for most providers. So I had assumed the same thing. However, when I tried to get a refresh token back, it would fail. It would say that that's not a thing. You don't do that. And then two, when I would try to make, like, for example, offline access right here in the string that you can see up here, it still wasn't giving me back anything for a refresh token, because usually if you add in that scope, it'll usually add in a refresh token depending on the actual like social media provider or whatever like platform you're dealing with. When I saw this, it started to go down a rabbit hole. So it basically led me to this documentation here where it turns out that doing programmatic refreshes is only for marketing developer platform partners, right? And what's funny is that they don't even have that terminology anymore. They actually like sunsetted that. So now you have to like migrate over to this community management API, right? And when I try to actually set up this like access, it turns out that you need an actual legal business entity, like an actual legal business entity. In general, you just need a business legal entity just to be able to have programmatic refresh tokens. That's the wildest thing I've ever seen, right? And when I was going down that rabbit hole, I didn't even realize, because it was right in front of my face, but I didn't even realize technically the access token that you get is for 60 days. So like, even if you don't have access to the programmable refreshes, the actual access token is good for 60 days. I don't think that's a big deal necessarily to then just have some sort of code that will then just check if whether or not your actual token is expired or going to be expired, and then just make a notification for that. So for this one, it's basically already complete. After I had to deal with that, I decided to go for the other ones, and the other ones were nowhere near this. For example, if I go into Meta in particular, and so the flow would be that right before you actually post, you actually get a new refresh token just so that you can use that one while you store it in the database, right? And then be able to use that for the actual API call. So like, that's awesome, because therefore I don't need to necessarily worry about doing refreshes every interval. Just as long as you are posting you will update your refresh token, right? So that's pretty cool in particular. So we have it where it has the grant type set to IG refresh token, and it'll just use that little if section to basically change up the string, and this could be done a little bit better in particular, but it's the same thing when it comes to threads as well. We'll have get threads access token, and we'll essentially use the same thing for th refresh token and essentially do the same thing, right? For a long-lived token, where you're essentially getting a refresh token with another refresh token. So when you first sign up right here, like you'll go and you'll get your Instagram access token, and then you'll immediately use that to get the actual exchange token, which then you can use for the refresh token. I know it's a bit, but that's just the first time you have to do that, right? Then afterward, you can continue to use this refresh token here in all of your calls to be able to renew for another refresh token, and then on top of that, make your API calls. And that's what I use to insert into here. And this now brings up the background service. For this, I'm actually using a library called Notify. It looks like it's fine. It didn't give me any issues, so thank goodness for that. But essentially, I'm able to then start a foreground service that will allow me to then hook into like anything that I need to for posting content while the application's in the background. My main goal of what I'm still working on in testing is trying to figure out how I can completely close down the application, but the background service still run. Because technically I want it kind of like YouTube, where it's kind of not intrusive, or at least on my phone it's a little weird, but when I go into the YouTube app on like my Android phone, if I close out of it fully, it's still in the background. Sometimes I have to force quit it. And I think that's just in case if like the player is running or something like that, it'll still have it just in case, like, so I don't necessarily know, and that could be a glitch on my side. But I would want something like that, because right now, as we could see that it shows like the little message here for like background fetch content initiated, because it basically checks every like 5 minutes or so. And if I close this down, it'll still like most likely be in the background, I'm pretty sure. As you can see right here, it's still technically calling the foreground and background service. However, that's only because right now, technically this application is in the background. If I go like this, I don't believe that it works anymore. No, see, yeah, it doesn't work anymore. And that makes sense that it doesn't work, because I basically killed the application fully. And that's one of the things that I'll have to do to make that work, because essentially that would mean that in order for the application to actually work, you would always need the application in the background, which I don't like. It's something that I'll have to look into. But once this part is done, I'm essentially done with the app at a full level that like works. And that would be awesome. From there, I would literally just clean up things, make it look good, maybe change up some settings and things like that, maybe like stew on it for about like 2 to 3 weeks just to make sure everything's good, and do some more like maybe end-to-end testing setups. And then other than that, I'm seeing that this app is going to probably be released to the App Store, I'm hoping by August max, just in case something else happens. But that's it for this video. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and please subscribe. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, please leave them in the comments below, as I love to interact with you guys. And other than that, I hope the rest of your day goes well. Peace, everyone.